Hello, good evening,
Good.
everyone. We'll have a quick introduction. Each one will have a chance to introduce themselves. I think I know all the three of you, so I'll skip. Can we go to Grace? Can you introduce yourself, please?
I'm either Nyaradze or Grace. Interested in politics of Zimbabwe.
All right. My name is Godfrey. I'm in Essex. I get a lot of interest in the developments in Zimbabwe regarding, especially more so when we are facing elections that could set how what development will come into Zimbabwe in the next 5 years after the elections. So just to discuss any matters that we see fit to discuss regarding the elections, I'm very much interested in that.
Okay, thanks very much, Godfrey. Benjamin, go ahead.
Hello, I'm Benjamin. I'm based in Canada, Vancouver. And the main reason I'm actually here is to try and try and brainstorm with like-minded people how we can actually help the situation in our country, and also just to try and hear from others their perspective of what they think could be the problems that we are facing and how best we can actually deal with them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. So Godfrey is going to introduce the topic and give a short talk on it. Then we'll just open it for discussion. Go ahead, Godfrey.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Wilbert, and good evening, good afternoon, lady and gentlemen.
Evening.
Good evening. We all have seen the article, I hope. The article referring to a visit by the Commonwealth representatives into Zimbabwe, which is probably already happening or within the next few days. So we want to look at it. Firstly, I would like to just add on and reaffirm the opening introduction that was given by our brother here, Ben, where he says a grouping of like-minded people. Like-minded people in this case is, I take it, is people wishing the same outcome for what we are dealing with right now. Yeah. Not that we want to exclude all those with alternative views, but we want in the end to have a common understanding of what's going on. So anyway, there is this visit by the Commonwealth people. We all know that we were booted out of the Commonwealth for various misdeeds, political misdeeds during the Mugabe era. But now, this visit that we hear about, we don't know if it's to assess because they've had that there have been a lot of progress on the issues that we were booted out of because of, or it's just a visit to assess where we stand at the moment. I don't know if the ban had expiry date, or it's because the government or ZANU has requested the visit. We wonder whether the ground is ripe enough for such a visit, for such an assessment, or if it's really worth assessing. We also don't want to see, we hope Commonwealth is not blinded by ZANU and believing that there has been a lot of progress in politically or democratically, actually. Because when they look at it from afar, maybe there's some things that we don't see. So we shall discuss with all those in mind, and we also want to find out from us here if the ticket to the Commonwealth is punishment or reward, or will entice our government into making amendments in the democratic processes of the country. So I think if we go through all those, we'll come to an agreement on what the way forward or how we see it. Over to you, Wilbert.
Thanks very much, Godfrey. I think that is fair enough. My first comment would be on the issue of whether or not this was a question of Zanu PF could, when it was suspended, it could reapply and readmit it. No, the reapplication actually happened after the 2017 military coup. If Mugabe was still alive, I don't think he would have reapplied, because he knew. In fact, he's the one who took out Zimbabwe before Zimbabwe was booted out. So the whole point was that Zimbabwe under Mugabe had not changed. And Mnangagwa's idea is that the new dispensation had changed sufficiently to justify him reapplying and the Commonwealth reconsidering it. But let's not forget what he did reapply soon after the 2017 military coup. And the Commonwealth told him then, in no uncertain terms, that Zimbabwe will be readmitted if it can hold free, fair, and credible elections, among other things, in 2018. And the Commonwealth had observer mission team that went to Zimbabwe specifically during the 2018 elections to see whether those elections were free, fair, and credible. And if they'd come out with a favorable report, they would have recommended that Zimbabwe should be readmitted. They did not. And that's why the Zimbabwe was never readmitted. So I think the most important question we have got to ask here as well is, what has changed since 2018 in terms of reforms for free, fair, and credible elections? Nothing has changed. Absolutely nothing. Zanu PF has not implemented even one meaningful democratic reform. Zanu PF is using violence worse than it did actually in 2018, because this time they are under even increasing pressure to rig elections to stay in power, because the economy is not improved. So that is the reality that we are facing, the way I understand it.
Yes, thank you. Can I give it to you, Ben? If you could, are you through, Mr. Wilbert?
Yeah, sure. I'm just waiting for other people to make their own put in their contribution, their understanding there.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. So before we, before I actually say, are they, is it worth actually saying that there's a need for an assessment, right? Uh, let's put it this way: what has changed from, let's not look at 2018 because our country dates before that. What has changed since the first election, right? That which was in 1980. What has changed on the ground to say in terms of free and fair elections, to say in terms of human rights, right? What has changed before we were even taken out? The reason why we were taken out, we know that there were all these infringements, right? But since the beginning, I'm sure these infringements were there, right? So what has changed for us to even warrant an assessment, right? So let's look at the pros and the cons. What has the government done so far that we could say, okay, maybe, just maybe, right? There is the reason for that assessment, for the Commonwealth team to come and gather and actually say, okay, Zimbabwe has done this towards the goal that we have set for them to be actually readmitted into the Commonwealth. Without answering that, I don't think we can. It's baseless to say there there is the need for all this. Otherwise, we just know the outcome is just going to be the same. They're just going to go back and say, do certain things which we already know exist and which we know that we are supposed to be doing. Thank you.
Oh, okay. For me, my question would be, why do we need to go back into the Commonwealth? Do you want a begging bowl again from the Commonwealth that is always given out to the Commonwealth countries by the British government? Do we still want that, or we can do it on our own? And the human rights are not right anyway at the moment in Zim. So there is no way we can be readmitted. We took ourselves out, so we stay out. It's for their benefits, but no one else's. That's why they want the Commonwealth in.
Thank you, everyone, for these contributions. Yes, definitely. I think the ground is not ripe enough for. I don't think they have even met one condition that was set for readmission. We may even look at the recent. We know that recently, or this week, or a few days ago, this Sitole was released from prison. The timing of that release looks a bit suspicious. Maybe he's just trying to hoodwink the Commonwealth visitors, or just to silence anything on the ground that could maybe, or people protesting against these incarcerations. So I think Zanu really plays with people's minds. And also we want to look at whether readmission, whether Zanu is desperate for that readmission, and for what purpose, as our sister has said. Because that's one of the other sanctions against Commonwealth membership, which they have been behind doors trying to fight for readmission. And we have seen that most of the African nations, the countries, have been also playing towards getting Zimbabwe readmitted into the Commonwealth. That way, I think ZANU, the way I see it, are desperate. They may say, we don't want to belonging to that club of yours does not mean anything. But I think behind their offices, they really try hard to get readmitted. So,
well, my response to that one, Godfrey, would be on the first issue of the release of the Triple C um, um, members from prison. That is actually, I totally agree with you in saying that Zanu PF is just playing with people's minds. Because to start with, those people were incarcerated. For what crime? What crime did they commit? And if they committed the crime, why didn't you take them to through the courts so that they could be convicted and then sentenced to a jail term in accordance with the law? So this is a situation where Zanu PF incarcerated them for no other reason than to silence them because of, as we know, they were talking about the death of Mo Blessing Ali, a victim of the regime. So this is again the regime playing with people's minds. So now they want to release these officials and appear as if, they are now the ones who are being generous. They're doing the whole country a favor. They're now the ones who respect human rights. Why did you incarcerate them in the first place? So I think that is again another situation where Zanu PF is using people's minds, playing with people's minds. But to come back to the other issue, why would Zanu PF be keen to be included in the Commonwealth? Zanu PF has got every reason to want to achieve that. The first one is, of course, the economic side of it. When Mnangagwa got into power, one of the things he promised was that he was going to kickstart the economy that was already in serious trouble after decades of Mugabe misrule. And one of the ways of doing it is re-engaging with the international community. And that re-engagement has failed because Zanu PF has not changed. Businesses were not coming, we were not doing any business in Zimbabwe because Zimbabwe was a pariah state. And that situation still remains on the ground. Zimbabwe is still a pariah state after Mnangagwa. He failed to stamp out corruption. He failed to hold free and fair and credible elections. The only thing that changed in 2017 is who was the top dog and a few others around him. Otherwise, Zimbabwe has not changed. It's still a nation ruled by thugs. It's still a pariah state, a lawless. Corruption is rampant. Mismanagement is gross mismanagement. So those are the reasons he would want to appear to re-engage with the international community in the hope that that will bring confidence in the government and confidence in the business sector. But I don't think that is going to happen. The other reason, of course, the immediate one, is if the Commonwealth was to, they are there right now in Zimbabwe, from my reading of the articles, from as of today, Saturday the 12th, to the 17th of November. And I don't know whether at the end of that period they are going to come up with their recommendation that will be sent to the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, and then she will in turn circulate it to the heads of the Commonwealth for them to come up with a decision whether or not to readmit Zanu PF. But if they were to do that, but in fact, even the fact that they are in Zimbabwe, Zanu PF is going to blow its own trumpet and make a big issue of how its re-engagement is working, and they are making significant progress. But if they were to be readmitted, that is even worse, because then Zanu PF will be saying, "You see, now we've made a break with the Commonwealth. All the other institutions will follow." And that decision, if it was to be made just before the 2023 elections, that would be a disaster for Zimbabwe, because ZANU PF has not changed anything, has not implemented any meaningful reforms. So it can go ahead and rig the elections, confident that the Commonwealth will turn a blind eye to the rigged elections. And to be quite honest, SADC will be under enormous pressure also to turn a blind eye. The last thing we want is for ZANU PF to rig the 2023 elections and then get legitimacy. That would be a disaster for Zimbabwe.
Uh,
Mm.
if I may add to that, if you look back, I think just after the military coup, right? If what the president, Mr. Mnangagwa, said, right? He says he actually promised everybody that there was going to be some form of change to the way he approaches uh, governing people, right? Everybody was sold, let's say, a pipe dream, basically. And I think then even the Commonwealth would have bought it, that this guy probably means business, and this guy is determined for change. Now, for if you were to ask them the same question, do you actually think that this guy is actually going to deliver on whatever he promised a couple of years back? I think it's 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 so clear there hasn't been anything that has changed. So, as far as re-engagement, of course, I mean, the world is now a global village, and we would want Zimbabwe to belong to uh, uh, the Commonwealth, so that, I mean, for economic benefits and for social and all those things, right? Which is good. But do we actually merit ourselves going back into this group? Well, personally, I don't think so, because with the situation on the ground, we are going taking into consideration the people that were incarcerated, right? Uh, and I managed to look, right, uh, and to listen to both the Triple C members, what they said when they were addressing the mourners that were gathered at Mo Blessing Ali's funeral, right? And what the chairman said, right? Both of them, we could say they did encourage a little bit of violence, let's just say. So I don't think it was, if they were going to arrest somebody, I think it was going to be fair if they had arrested both parties. And then that would have shown that there's a balance of the scale. But now they decided, no, the only people that actually did do the wrong were the Triple C people. And then the ZANU PF person and the ZANU PF members were okay, which kind of like just tilts the scales in favor of the other, which already right there is one of the reforms that we were told to actually implement. So as far as that goes, I think it's there for the Commonwealth to decide, basically. But I think it's clear for everybody to see.
Mm. Yes.
But also, I have a question. Why would Zimbabwe want to go back into the Commonwealth when other Commonwealth countries are pulling out? It doesn't make sense. What would they benefit when other countries who are Commonwealth are moving away from the Commonwealth. So we have also got to think along those lines. They're just being exploited by the British people. With the benefit of minerals, I think.
Well, personally, I don't think there is any harm if Zimbabwe was still a democratically functioning, a healthy and functioning democracy. Uh, we could still be in the Commonwealth, and I think when we were there, we did benefit from other gains. Yes, as for trade being exploited, well, China is not in the Commonwealth, and yet, if you look at who is the greatest nation that is exploiting Zimbabwe, I would say it's China, not the UK or the USA or any of these other countries in the West. So, being in the Commonwealth has got its benefits. And in any case, in this particular case, the reason why Zimbabwe was putted out was because Zanu PF was not living by the um, values and principles of the Commonwealth. I think Benji did refer earlier on why after independence they turned a blind eye to it. That was another weakness on the part of the Commonwealth. They've tended always to be very gentle and turn a blind eye to some of these things. Uh, Even now, I mean, if you look at who is the chairman of the Commonwealth, it's President Paul Kagame of Rwanda. And that country, ever since their genocide, has never held free, fair, and credible elections. And Godfrey was right also to say some of these African countries are the ones who are saying, oh, Zimbabwe should be readmitted. Because they also benefit in the sense that if you have got somebody who is bending the rules and breaking the rules, and you are breaking them yourself, you're in good company. So yes, you would want him to be in the club because if you break the rules yourself, they will support you. So that is one of the weakness of the Commonwealth now, that it's supposed to be a consensus group, and where those countries like Canada that have got have successfully run free, fair, and credible elections, really functioning democracies, when they try to speak at these gatherings, they are outnumbered, by those countries that whose democratic credentials are questionable, and the Commonwealth cannot go around and enforce all the rules strictly, because I think it will end up with most countries, in particularly Africa, being booted out. So they relax the rules to some extent. But in the case of Zimbabwe, let's face it, the number of times that Zimbabwe had broken the rules was such that they could not turn a blind eye to it. And in 2003, Mugabe knew it was a question of either you jump or you'll be pushed, you know. And for the Commonwealth now to readmit Zimbabwe after that, without any meaningful reforms being carried out, without any guarantees that elections will be free, fair, and credible, would be absolutely a slap in the face of people like the four of us here who have been fighting for free, fair, and credible elections. That argument, I think, should be made.
When we're also looking at the benefits, going back to what my sister asked, she was saying some countries are leaving the Commonwealth and some are actually trying to join, just like Zimbabwe, right? When it comes to trade is not going to be 50-50. That just doesn't happen in the business world. It's what you are willing to give and what how much do you have to offer? And then we can start talking, and then we start, playing around with the figures. So as far as Zimbabwe is concerned, Zimbabwe, we know it's got its minerals, it's got quite a lot of things that it has to offer. But can it actually do without? Like, can Zimbabwe mine without the other countries that will come and do partnership with it? We all know they can't. So it's like somebody that knows that they have water underground, but they don't know how to get the water to come into the house just for general use. So we can say it's it's a good thing that they have water underground. We need to first get somebody that can get it from underground to come to us. Okay, just to come to the surface, not to go into the house through the taps and everything. So Zimbabwe needs trading partners. Because right now, yes, they've got trading partners. The biggest trading partner is China. But to tell you the honest truth, nobody knows what is really what the partnership is all about right now. Everything is we are just seeing things moving. But what is the partnership all about? What are the people gaining? What is the country gaining as a whole? What developments? What betterment has come to every household? Nothing to talk about. So I think that needs also to be addressed, right? And personally, I think we Zimbabwe needs a reset, and through the only way we can go through the reset is by implementing some of these things. We may not be able to implement everything, but we need some of these things so that we can actually measure ourselves where we are right now. Zimbabwe, I don't think we can actually measure where we stand. We don't even know whether we don't even have a campus. It's just like there's a ship that you just set sail. Say, okay, let's go. We are going to look for land. It doesn't make sense. Right now, everything doesn't make sense. So I think hopefully maybe by the end of this we can actually try and make sense of everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. If I may also add, firstly, I think we should say this is the right time. The timing of the Commonwealth is good, because if they do a proper assessment, the Commonwealth team, if they do a proper assessment, they will or they will put again those conditions onto the surface to remind everybody that these are the things that are wrong with Zimbabwe democratically. And everyone who is focusing on the elections will make their own assessment. Everyone being the voters would make their own assessment whether we are now in a position to be called a democratic country, and whether we are now in a position to go ahead with elections. And also for ZANU itself, I think they will also be reminded to have a look again. They will be forced, obviously. If you have a fresh report, because most have forgotten about the report that was given 5 years ago. But if the report is given now, it will be hanging in people's heads very close to election time. So the timing is good, depending on whether this Commonwealth will do a very good job assessing and ticking off the things that have been addressed and those that have not been addressed. The other thing is, which we have mentioned here, the benefit. The benefit of belonging to any organization with many organs within, or in other words, countries, it's you get guided, you develop a common guided way of democracy. Instead of just establishing your own way, the African democratic way of doing things. We note that in the Commonwealth, there are quite a number of African countries. And most of the African countries really push this, we want to do it the African way. But within their own ways, they are very different. So maybe belonging to that, us Zimbabweans who may be doing extreme things may be turned like to a common or center ground democratically. Again, Zimbabwe needs many trade partners for healthy competition. You may say our partner is China, but are you getting the best benefit out of China? So if we have many partners, we have freedom of choice. You can choose to deal with Canada because probably Canada is offering better. You can, and in the end, China will also bend their own ways to trade fairly with Zimbabwe. So belonging to an organization like the Commonwealth, it will be beneficial for Zimbabwe. I think that's what I had to add.
Also, let's look at Zimbabwe financial. Zimbabwe, according to the RBZ governor, at one point recently, you were saying we are running at a surplus. And well, I don't understand how he gets to a surplus and people are actually struggling. And these guys are going about asking for loans, asking for donations when you've got a surplus. To, to any normal human being, this would not make sense. So this is why I'm saying with Zimbabwe, the problem is you cannot measure them because nobody seems to know what exactly is going on. There is so much, let me just put it straight, there's so much lies that are there. So when you find Zimbabwe actually wanting to go into the Commonwealth, there is something that is there to be gained. Zimbabwe needs all the help that they can get because right now we all know the truth. Yes, the RBZ governor might say that there is a lot of money that he has got stored up, but the truth on the ground is that money doesn't seem to be there. So joining the Commonwealth would be something that would be a very good achievement for the Zimbabwean government that is currently there right now. So there is a lot to be gained. I think if you want to leave the Commonwealth, maybe you have found better partners, which is good for you. But Zimbabwe with no better partner, I think joining would be an achievement.
It would be an achievement, but for who? Not for the ordinary person.
I think it is important to understand what the Commonwealth can and cannot do. In terms of trade, we are trading with South Africa, although we are not. South Africa is, I think, our second. In Africa, is the biggest trading partner, and worldwide, I think, probably still the second biggest trading partner after China, and yet we are no longer in the Commonwealth. So, in terms of trade, being in the Commonwealth or not being in the Commonwealth, really it's not made any difference at all. But so we cannot put emphasis on that. But to come back to what Godfrey was saying there about it will be a positive thing to go into the Commonwealth. If you go into the Commonwealth without having accepted the reason why you were booted out in the first place, will only encourage Zanu PF to continue doing what he did before. That is one of the things about Zanu PF. You know, they want to convince everybody that Zanu PF is doing nothing wrong. But it is doing something wrong here. Even SADC itself tried to put it in the sin bin during the GNU. It's most unfortunate that no reforms were implemented, but that was the intention. You know, and in this particular case, in fact, if you look at the reports that came out I think it was last week or the week before, about the Pan-African Parliament that were meeting in Joburg in South Africa, their resolution was that Zimbabwe sanctions should be lifted and Zimbabwe should be readmitted into the Commonwealth. The Secretary General or one of the senior officials of the Commonwealth was there. And one of the undertakings they made is that they will reassess Zimbabwe's position, whether it's ready to go into to be readmitted in the Commonwealth. Some of these African countries are the ones who are piling up the pressure on the Commonwealth to readmit Zimbabwe without Zimbabwe having changed anything on the ground. It is not going to benefit the ordinary Zimbabwean if Zanu PF arrogantly gets away with blatantly rigging the elections. That is one of the problems we have had with SADC. And if we're going to have the Commonwealth doing the same thing, rubber stamping rigged elections, then we are totally lost because we are completely on our own then. Like I said, if you look at the chairman of the Commonwealth right now, is Paul Kagame. And he has been very arrogantly saying, the rest of the world should not impose their modem of democracy on Africa. There is no such thing as a European version of democracy, an African version of democracy. There's no such thing. If we are going to have a competent government, we need to have all the citizens must be given a meaningful say in the governance of the country. In other words, elections must be free, fair, and credible. And if you're going to have a de facto one-party state, what kind of voting are you having here? What choices do people have in a one-party state? So we are back to where we started. And people like Kagame are pushing hard that there is something called a version of African democracy. There is no such thing. And I think that is where we need to stand. And the Commonwealth, in this particular case, if they were to bend over backwards and readmit Zanu PF with all its shortcomings, then in Zimbabwe we can kiss goodbye to democratic change, because Zanu PF is never going to change them.
Yeah. Exactly his words, Mugabe, when he said, "You can keep your Britain, I keep my Zimbabwe."
Yes, they want to pretend that they're tough.
A good question would be, why also does the Commonwealth agree to put a chairperson, somebody that is doing exactly the same thing, what they stand against, to lead the Commonwealth? Why are they doing
it? I think
that's a good question.
I think it's rotational. Remember, we also held Chogam. I don't know what year that was, but probably in the mid-90s. And Mugabe was chairman of that. Then Zimbabwe, although we cannot say it was fully democratic, but I think the chairmanship rotates among countries or members that belong to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the most interesting cases was when Idi Amin was president of Uganda. He not only wanted the chairmanship, he wanted to be the head of the Commonwealth. So they
Oh
to
dear.
very cleverly make sure he doesn't attend the Commonwealth. So there you are. That is what we are looking at. I mean, it is a voluntary organization. I think it has
Yeah.
done a lot of good things as well. But it is
Mhm.
important it's seen to be adhering to the at least some of the most basic principles of human rights, law and order. Which is what it has been trying to do. Yes, it's under like all consensus organizations. If the rest of the members uh, of one track, sometimes it's very difficult to keep them under check. But Paul Kagame becoming chairperson of CHOGAM does not mean Rwanda is now a democratic country. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, so
Mm.
this is exactly what I'm saying. Why I'm asking this question. Why do we have a situation where the measuring stick is different, right? If we are saying we want to, we don't want to engage countries that are abusing human rights. There's no abusing to say, okay, this one is abusing too much, this one is abusing a little bit. It's abuse is abuse, right? If we can say abuse is abuse and we are not going to tolerate it, then I think that will be the best measuring stick that we can actually use to say, okay, we are only just going to be dealing with people that are, are doing the right thing. Because it's not setting a good example to say you're taking somebody that is abusing and that is also rigging elections, and you're chasing somebody else that is also rigging election. We sound almost exactly like what Zanu is doing. The Commonwealth is doing exactly like what Zanu is doing, where you arrest these and you free these, but they did the same thing.
Mm.
It
And, and,
doesn't.
and
Yeah.
I think your point is taken, but what you've got to realize here is uh, realize that you can't all be going at the same speed. Even here in UK, can you say Kuti, or there in Canada where you are, can you honestly say Kuti, or all elections are absolutely 100% perfect? Yes, you try to achieve perfection. Yes, there are some of the basic rules where you can say, I know these are basic rules. If you break them, that is totally unacceptable. So I think that part of it, the give and take, can be allowed. And in this particular case, actually, if you had a situation here where, like I said, if Zanu PF was to be readmitted into the Commonwealth, some of the things that we're talking about here, like Paul Kagame, Yoweri Museveni, having a de facto one-party state, and elections being so loaded that they always win them, it will give them even more confidence to rig elections even more boldly. If somebody like Mnangagwa was in, who can kill people to make sure that he wins the elections and he still remains in the Commonwealth.
Mm.
So at least those are some of the things we're saying. Those who really commit some of the outrageous things, we cannot accept it. We've got to be able to say, no, you have crossed the double red line there. That is totally unacceptable. If you cross the yellow line, you'll be given a caution. But if you cross a double red line again and again, you've got to, as an organization, be able to be strong enough to say, no, that is unacceptable, and take a certain measures against people like that. And I think that is what the Commonwealth is doing. But what we, as citizens of Zimbabwe, need to be saying to them is, You cannot allow Zanu PF just to appease them because they've got a number of members in the Commonwealth who are from African countries who do not care that elections are rigged, who want Zanu PF to be readmitted. That is totally unacceptable. And I think in this particular case, we can even boldly say to the Commonwealth, personally, if it was my decision, if Zimbabwe should finally get rid of Mugabe and this ZANU PF dictatorship, there is absolutely no reason why we would want to remain in the Commonwealth if they readmit ZANU PF the way it is. That would be making a principled stand. You know, we told you you cannot readmit ZANU PF under these conditions, particularly if they readmit them now. Then a few months later down the line to 2023 elections, ZANU PF, as we all expect them to do, blatantly rig these elections, use wanton violence, worse than they did in 2002 when they booted them out. You know, what will the Commonwealth do? Are they going to boot them out again? The chances are no, they're not going to do so. Now, if Zimbabwe was to finally get rid of Mnangagwa and company, why would Zimbabwe, a proud nation, accept remaining in a Commonwealth that had absolutely no regard for some of its own values?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, yes, I do agree as well. But on the question of why the Commonwealth would want Zimbabwe in, I also think they look at it this way, that it's better to have like a rogue government in the club in order to control them, because then they can use that and say, if you continue to do that, this, we are going to boot you out again. That can control people like Mnangagwa in a way. And I also see this as an opportune time for them to settle differences. If the Commonwealth really do their job properly. We are just hoping that they have not been fooled by some of the sugarcoating which ZANU has been doing prior to this visit. I see it as a good thing that they are really coming very close to election period like this, and it would be a good chance for opposition or the general people to demonstrate or have if possible, throw in their feelings to these visitors if they are given a chance, especially opposition. They can really tell them what's going on. We hope this Commonwealth has not been starved of news about the developments in Zimbabwe. We hope they are quite aware of everything that is going on. But contacts with the general people, with opposition, would have been beneficial for the way forward. I think, in short, I think this is a good thing that they are coming. And it's an opportunity for us to say to the outside world, this is what is going on, and we wish things could go this way, maybe mostly democratically.
But when you say that when you actually said that by re-engaging the Zimbabwe as the way it is beneficial, that you can control them. Are you not risking taking a bad apple and putting it among good ones, and then it ends up spoiling the whole basket? I mean, you cannot twist rules or bend rules just to accommodate one individual. If you say this is a no, somebody is got to stand by that there, and a no should be a no, and a yes should be a yes. I don't think just twisting it just to try and accommodate one person, because the next person will also feel that I can also get away with this. Because right now, what we are looking at, we are not looking at just accommodating the Zimbabwe government. We are looking at a situation where they are accommodating Zimbabwe as a whole, all individuals, all Zimbabwe. And if they do that, as things stand, like what Mr. Mukori says, it, it'll be it'll be robbery to the people, to you and me. It'll be robbery, because we thought they were fighting for us. All these reforms are to benefit us. It's not going to benefit the Commonwealth. It's not going to benefit UK. It's not going to benefit America. It's to benefit us, the people. Now, if they are going to bend it so that it accommodates the one people that are enjoying, then I don't think there is democracy in the first place. So I think they'll be just preaching the wrong gospel.
They are already preaching the wrong gospel, because since they're in Zimbabwe now, what is the situation with Job Sakala and the other guy who are still in prison? Are they going to take that into consideration for what they are looking for to do the assessment?
I think it all depends on who they talk to, who they sit down with to make an assessment. If they
But it's
are
general
open,
knowledge. It's general knowledge that they're still in prison. So they should not have to sit down with anyone to get the assessment for Job Sakala and the other guy. It's just general knowledge worldwide that they are still in prison. So for me, the Commonwealth, they really don't have to be there. They know what the situation is on the ground.
Yeah, that's
It's just the
exactly what I
formalities that
said.
they're
What,
doing.
what are they assessing? Because as far as
You know,
we know, there's nothing really that has changed that would warrant an assessment. What was there
there
yesterday is
isn't.
still there. If you leave, let's say a big stone behind your backyard, you can't expect that big stone to be just gone up by itself. It's still there.
No.
Unless you do something about it, it's still there.
yeah. I, but I still feel that the fact that they are sitting with the Commonwealth during this visit, they will obviously be talking about such cases. And maybe they will say, we are not going to tick this box off because you still have such a person incarcerated. So they will streamline the areas which, if any, that the government has managed to amend democratically, and still highlight the areas where they still have shortcomings.
Yes,
I
they
think it
can
is
do that.
important to differentiate between who is driving this Commonwealth visit. Like I said, from my understanding of it, the Pan African Parliament that was meeting in South Africa was very strong. They came up with very strong resolutions that sanctions should be lifted against Zimbabwe, and then the Zimbabwe should be readmitted to the Commonwealth. And the Secretary General official who attended that meeting gave an undertaking that they will send a team to Zimbabwe to reassess Zimbabwe's progress in terms of being readmitted to the Commonwealth. So they are already coming there with a view under pressure from the various Commonwealth African countries who want Zimbabwe to be readmitted. This is distinct
Okay, but
from, say, for instance, the European Union, who went to Zimbabwe and they were going there specifically to see whether the 23 recommendations they had made after the 2018 elections had been implemented. And before the official even left Zimbabwe, he gave a press conference and saying not even one of the 23 recommendations were implemented. I think that's where we should be coming from. In this particular case, if we upload the Commonwealth will under pressure from the African leaders, will go ahead and readmit Zimbabwe. And to readmit Zimbabwe without any meaningful change that this regime has made, if anything at all, the elections in 2002 were nothing compared to the elections that has followed since. So we end up with a situation where Zanu PF can confidently go and blatantly rig these elections and get endorsement from the Commonwealth that the elections were free, fair, and credible. What have we gained? Nothing.
Yes. What do we think is the likely outcome from the visit?
Personally, my guess would be the judging
sorry.
from the fact that they already going there after the attending the Pan Africa Parliament meeting, which was pressuring them to visit Zimbabwe and reconsider readmitting Zimbabwe. That is where they're likely to go. But if we are articulate enough and say, no, 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 wait a minute, you cannot tell us Zimbabwe can be readmitted when it has not changed anything on the ground. That's number one. Number two, to readmit Zimbabwe on the eve of an election, which we know Zanu PF is going to rig, is sending the wrong message. It's saying to Zanu PF, you can do what you please. That is the last message we want Zanu PF to have right now. So in this particular case, I think there are countries like Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom itself, and many of the other countries in the Far East, which are democratic countries, which would not support Zanu PF, Zimbabwe being readmitted. But if they are put under enormous pressure, they will say, well, okay, if the majority of the African countries want it, fine, let them have it. Who would have lost is us who would have lost. We don't want another Rwanda where there is a de facto one-party state. We don't want another Uganda where there is a de facto one-party state. That's the last thing we want. We have had it for 42 years. And we have got to articulate that position and say, as Zimbabweans, we don't want this. If we are serious about joining the Commonwealth, then we should join it and live by the rules of the Commonwealth and not have the rules bent to accommodate Mnangagwa and his cronies. And that point must be made abundantly clear.
And I also think by joining the Commonwealth, that you are in the Commonwealth and you are sanctioned by the Commonwealth. I don't think that would make sense. It's That's one of the benefits that I think will just fall into place where they will have to just leave, because we cannot belong in the same group and be good friends, and then we we have got these boundaries that we must not do not do this and all that. I think for the Commonwealth, I think it's just a matter of stick to whatever you you use to measure your unit of measurement. Stick to that. If you are saying no to this, show the world that you mean no when it comes to that. Don't try and bend because of pressure and all that. It What message are you sending to everybody? Tomorrow,
But
any country can just decide to say, since you did that to Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe has always been a prime example, especially for the bad. Unfortunately, I wish it was for the good, but Zimbabwe is a prime example for all bad things. So let us not be an example to say during this time the Commonwealth had to to wave or to wink an eye because Zimbabwe. Let's just not go that way. If we are saying no to abuse or to human rights abuse, they must stand their ground, no matter how small the abuse is. If it's abuse, let it be labeled, let it be marked as abuse, and that unit of measurement. Well, this is why I don't understand what the assessment is. Maybe it's pressure, or maybe just to go and fulfill that. Hey, you guys, we went there. As far as we are concerned, Zimbabwe is still the Zimbabwe we left. Because for sure, it's still the Zimbabwe that they left. Whether it was 5 years ago, whether it was 20 years ago, whether it was Mugabe's era, it's still this. It's just a different driver that is a little bit younger, but it's still the same. It's still the same. We are
Mm.
basically going nowhere fast.
Well,
oh yeah, they're just
for
being
your own
bullies.
information on that one, Benjamin, the truth is, in fact, if you were following the 2018 elections, the Commonwealth Observer Mission were prepared to overlook all the other vote rigging shenanigans that had gone on in the elections. The only thing that clinched their decision not to readmit Zimbabwe into the Commonwealth is the shooting of people on the 1st of August. There they crossed the double red lines for the Commonwealth Observer Team. But if you really genuinely wanted to look at a free, fair, and credible elections, I don't see how you can honestly say those elections were free, fair, and credible when you don't even have something as basic as a verified voters roll. Yes, there was no violence in 2018 compared particularly to 2008, but this time there is violence as well. So all those things they will overlook them. The pressure from what is came out from South Africa, from the Pan African Parliament, is clear. They want Zimbabwe to be readmitted in the Commonwealth. And in a number of those countries, I think there is about 12 African countries that are in the Commonwealth. And their voices, and let's face it, they are lobbied by Zanu PF. Every time Zanu PF officials open their mouth at an international forum, even when during Mugabe's time, how many times did we hear him talk about sanctions? It got to the point where it was doing people's head in. All right, they remove the bloody sanctions for God's sake. You know, every time that crow stands up, he's talking about sanctions. Remove them. You know, and that is the attitude of some of these people. Remove the sanctions and readmit them in the Commonwealth. Let's see what they will do. But the truth of the matter is, it's us, the ordinary Zimbabweans, who will pay for it. Because if ZANU PF is readmitted without having to implement even one meaningful democratic reform, what makes you think they would want to do it? Of course, they would not want to do it then. They will know with confidence they can rig these elections and the Commonwealth will give them a stamp of approval. They've been doing it, like Benjamin correctly noted there. Before they were booted out in 2003, Zanu PF has been rigging elections since 1980. It's just that it wasn't so blatant, you know. But the Commonwealth, some of the cases, they'll come up with reports and saying, well, there were some irregularities that needs to be corrected, and we hope they will be corrected for the future. And come the next elections, none of those reforms had been corrected. Worse things happen, and they still turn a blind eye to it until 2002, when they felt they'd crossed the red lines. You know, that's why they wanted Zimbabwe put it out. But if they readmit them, they will not reboot them out. I can tell you that. And Zanu PF will honestly be even more confident they can rig these elections and get away with it.
So how do we deal with that as the people of Zimbabwe?
Well, at least what we can articulate to the Commonwealth, to uh, media, is to articulate our own position that the Commonwealth meeting its assessment of Zanu PF at this point is totally meaningless. The main problem we have in Zimbabwe is ordinary Zimbabweans themselves have not been heard. Yes, if you were in Zimbabwe, you would say, oh, it's because there's a Herald, the Chronicle, ZBC, those are ZANU PF controlled medias, and they will never allow your voice to be heard. What about here? Why have you not been playing an active role? What has stopped any one of us here sending an email to the Commonwealth Secretariat in London and saying this meeting is totally meaningless? Not only just the four of us, millions of other Zimbabweans out there.
Mm.
Why have we not been doing it? That is where our weakness lies.
And our other challenge is that of all our 124 opposition, not even once actually knows what is or where it's going. Basically, what its mission is. I just don't see any roadmap for any one of those oppositions, whether they are in Pollard, whether they are out of Pollard. It's when they actually even started this Pollard, I thought maybe it's a discussion, but of late, since it started, I just saw one person that stands up in front of people and says whatever he says, and then the meeting is over. How did that then become a discussion? You know what I mean? And then you have Triple C, they've got the majority, but they are just singing something that they know that they have actually failed before they changed their name. They were MDC and they're still doing the same things. They're still doing the same mistakes that they've been doing for the past 20 plus years. So for them to actually be the ones to carry the beacon on behalf of the people. I don't think they're worth they're worth the effort. So it's like I said, for Zimbabwe, it's so difficult to measure whether financially, whether socially. It's currently just a mess. I think that's why I said Zimbabwe just needs to implement at least from the 23. I think if they implement just a few, maybe 4, 5, you can actually see, oh, okay, this, you can see the shadow of what Zimbabwe is and where they stand, where they want to go. Because right now you can't see anything. This one is saying this. I mean, MDC, or Triple C, it's now difficult to see who is who between who. They fight each other. Tomorrow they're back together. They're saying they agree. Triple C is saying we cannot do without reforms. The next minute they want reforms on the 11th hour. What is going on? So it's difficult. Yes, they are coming to assess, and they're obviously going to come and ask some of these guys what their views are. They themselves don't know. I think personally they don't know. So we are actually relying on somebody that needs to discover themselves, to discover us. It's so I don't know.
I think
Well, can I just say that we are over an hour now,
oh,
and thank you very much for participating. I don't know whether you'd like all to give your closing remarks in about 2 minutes each, and then we can finish it. Meanwhile, before I forget, I don't know whether Nyarazai or Benji would want to lead the discussion on any of the items that you feel very strongly about. Let me know. I can um, set up another discussion. We hope that in future a lot more people will join in. This is just the beginning, and at the beginning, you don't expect many people to be aware of the broadcast. So hopefully, in future, we'll have more and more people. So for your closing remarks, can we start with you, Madam Grace?
Yeah. Well, basically, about the 124 people trying to lead Zimbabwe, we need that to be trimmed down, because 124 for a small country like ours, it doesn't work. It really does not work. We need someone who is passionate enough about Zimbabwe to be the opposition of Zimbabwe, for everyone's voice to be heard, who can relate to what we are going through. That's all.
oh, sorry. May I just ask the 24? In other words, 24 who are
There are about 124 people who have said they would want to be president of Zimbabwe.
okay. Oh yeah,
They
that one
all
is
don't, they have their own thinking. And most of them, they don't qualify for it.
yeah. All right. Okay. For my closing, I think I just see this visit as a positive thing because it gives certain people a voice to talk to the people who probably ZANU itself respects, who ZANU is desperate to be on the good side with. Now it depends who they talk to. If they talk to the opposition which has been silent on reforms, they may not get the right kind of message. So I see it as positive, but then it depends on who they talk to and which boxes they want to tick off in their assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nyamgure. Hello, sir.
For my closing remark, I would just like to say we love Zimbabwe. Especially me, I love Zimbabwe. I just hope and pray that one day sense may just prevail. The sense of God will actually prevail. We need God. We need to put God first, whatever we are doing.
Amen.
And then hopefully, the light will be shared amongst us, and then we can actually be a beacon. Zimbabwe is a very beautiful country. It's very rich, and we would actually be one of the top uh, African countries, if not in the world, but at least in Africa, that we can actually be an example, a good example this time. So I hope that this mission here would actually show our shortcomings and the positives. I would really like to see a positive note of what the current government is also doing. It would be nice. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much again, everybody, and good night.
Thank you.